The morning sun filtered gently through the tall trees that surrounded the small town cemetery. The air was crisp, with the fresh scent of blooming wildflowers, and a quiet stillness hung over the rows of headstones. The Jensen family had come to the cemetery that day to visit their grandmother's grave, a routine filled with both sorrow and love. Emily and Mark Jensen held hands as they knelt by the granite marker, laying fresh lilies on the stone that bore her name. Nearby, their 18-month-old daughter, Olivia, was wide-eyed and restless. The little girl, her golden curls bouncing as she toddled, was fascinated by the swaying grass and the scattered patches of sunlight on the dirt path. Her small boots made soft thuds on the earth as she wandered away from her parents' side, drawn by the curious shapes and shadows that stretched across the ground. Emily glanced up, just as Olivia stopped beside a cluster of old trees that bordered the cemetery's far edge. There, leaning against the bark of one ancient oak, was a weathered wooden coffin, a relic from a recent restoration project left temporarily near the maintenance shed. Olivia, intrigued by the strange object, reached out with chubby fingers to touch the cracked wood. At that moment, a faint, almost imperceptible sound caught Emily's attention, a soft scratching, like desperate claws against wood. She frowned, looking toward Olivia, who was now kneeling beside the coffin with a puzzled expression. Emily called out softly, but Olivia only giggled and pointed at the box. Mark hurried over, a knot tightening in his stomach. "What on earth?" he murmured, crouching down beside his daughter. The sound came again, a weak, fearful scratching, and this time Olivia's laughter stopped. She looked into the coffin, then back up at her parents with wide, innocent eyes. Emily exchanged a worried glance with Mark before calling the cemetery groundskeeper, Mr. Collins, who was nearby, tending to other graves. Within moments he was by their side, pulling out a small crowbar from his toolbox. "Let's see what's in there," he said carefully, his voice steady but curious. Slowly, with trembling hands, Mr. Collins lifted the coffin lid. The family held their breath. Inside, curled into a tight ball, was a German shepherd, his fur matted and dirty, eyes wide and filled with confusion. He was thin, clearly hungry and weak, but alive. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. "Oh my God," Emily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Olivia reached out her tiny hand instinctively, her baby voice soft as she babbled to the dog. The German shepherd's ears twitched at the sound, and he turned his head slightly toward the child. Though weak, the dog didn't shy away. Instead, he looked at Olivia with a quiet longing, as if sensing the kindness behind her smile. Mark gently lifted the dog out of the coffin, careful, not to startle him. Max, as they would soon learn his name, rested his head on Mark's arm, exhausted but trusting. The family wrapped him in an old blanket they found nearby, trying to warm his cold body. Around them, a small crowd had begun to gather, other visitors who had heard about the strange discovery. Whispered questions filled the air. How did the dog get there? Who could have done such a thing? No one had answers. As the sun climbed higher, shining on the unlikely rescue unfolding beneath the trees, the Jensens knew their lives had just changed. What started as a quiet visit to a cemetery had turned into a moment of unexpected hope, a story waiting to be told. The cemetery air grew heavier with silence as the gathered crowd watched the Jensens cradle the trembling German shepherd. Max's big brown eyes scanned the unfamiliar faces, flickering with both fear and a desperate hope for safety. His once glossy coat was now dull and tangled, dust clinging to him like a second skin. Dirt streaked his muzzle, and his ribs showed, faintly beneath the grime. It was clear this dog had endured a long and lonely ordeal, but how and why no one could say. Emily knelt down beside Max, brushing a hand gently over his back. "You poor thing," she whispered. Max flinched at first but didn't pull away. Instead, he gave a soft whimper and rested his head against her palm. Olivia, fascinated, crouched next to her mother and mimicked the gentle petting with her tiny hands, cooing words only a toddler could understand. Max's eyes softened just a little more, the tension in his body easing. Mark crouched beside them, scanning the crowd for any clue about the dog's strange imprisonment. "Who could do this?" he murmured, his voice heavy with disbelief. To lock a dog inside a coffin, it's cruel. The groundskeeper, Mr. Collins, shook his head slowly. I've been working here for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Nobody reported a missing dog around here either. It's a mystery, and a heartbreaking one. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she glanced at her daughter, who was still gently stroking Max's head. Olivia has such a way with him, she said quietly, like they were meant to find each other today. A few neighbors who had come by curiosity now joined the Jensens near the maintenance shed. Some offered blankets, others called local animal shelters. Phones were out trying to find a vet who could come quickly. The urgency in the air was palpable. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a race against time. As they waited, Max's breathing grew steadier. He shifted a little, sitting up for the first time. His eyes locked on Olivia's tiny hand reaching toward him. With surprising gentleness, Max licked the toddler's fingers, a soft, grateful gesture that brought a chorus of awes from the crowd. Olivia giggled, delighted by the wet touch, and clapped her hands. For a moment, the weight of the day seemed to lift, replaced by a tender connection between the smallest and most vulnerable among them, the dog and the baby, united by fate. When the veterinarian arrived, she moved quickly but calmly. Dr. Hayes knelt beside Max and began a quick examination. He's weak, malnourished, but otherwise not badly injured, she said, her tone both relieved and concerned. We'll get him hydrated and fed, and hopefully he'll bounce back soon. Emily and Mark exchanged hopeful glances. They had already decided Max would come home with them. This dog, abandoned and forgotten in such a horrifying way, was going to have a new family. And Olivia, with her fearless heart, was already his guardian angel. As Dr. Hayes packed Max carefully into a crate for transport, Olivia reached out one last time, whispering her own kind of promise. "We'll take care of you, Max," she seemed to say, eyes shining with pure innocence. Back in the Jensen family car, the quiet hum of the engine was a soothing contrast to the tension of the morning. Max rested his head on Emily's lap, eyelids heavy but peaceful for the first time in weeks. Olivia, sitting in her car seat, kept glancing back at her new friend with a smile that said more than words ever could. The mystery of how Max ended up inside the coffin remained unsolved. But what mattered most was the life that had been saved, a fragile thread of hope woven between a child and a dog in the most unexpected place. In the quiet warmth of the Jensen family's living room, sunlight streamed softly through the curtains, casting golden patches on the wooden floor. Max lay curled on a thick blanket beside the fireplace, his breathing slow and steady as he rested after the long, exhausting journey from the cemetery. For the first time in what felt like forever, he was safe. Olivia, perched on the edge of the couch, watched him with wide, curious eyes. Though barely a year and a half old, she had an uncanny sense of calm around Max, sensing his vulnerability. Without needing words, her tiny fingers reached out hesitantly, then boldly as she crawled closer. Max, still weak but trusting, lifted his head and met Olivia's gaze. There was no fear in his eyes, only a gentle invitation. Slowly, the dog stretched out a large paw, resting it near her chubby hand. Olivia giggled, the sound pure and bright, and she carefully touched Max's paw with her own. Emily and Mark exchanged glances, both moved by the moment. "It's like they understand each other," Emily whispered, her voice soft. "Olivia's never been so gentle with animals before, and Max, well, he's responding like he's found a friend." Mark smiled, pulling Olivia closer for a better look. "Maybe Max saved Olivia just as much as she saved him," he joked, though the feeling was real. Over the next few hours, Olivia's fearless nature continued to shine. When Max whimpered softly, unsure of his new surroundings, Olivia leaned in and placed a reassuring hand on his head. The dog closed his eyes and relaxed, as if comforted by the baby's touch. Her bright eyes followed every movement he made, her laughter bubbling whenever he wagged his tail or gave a gentle nuzzle. The bond that blossomed between the two was something remarkable to witness. Despite the age gap and differences in their worlds, Olivia and Max seemed to communicate in a language of kindness and trust. Emily thought about how often children and animals shared an instinctive connection, one free from judgment or fear. Later, as evening settled and the household began to quiet, Olivia's parents prepared a simple meal. Max was given a bowl of warm water and soft dog food. He ate slowly, savoring every bite, encouraged by Olivia's delighted claps and babbles of encouragement. When bedtime came, Olivia insisted on bringing Max's blanket closer to her crib. Emily and Mark watched, touched by their daughter's insistence on including Max in every part of her day. They couldn't help but feel that this dog was no longer a stray or a lost animal. He was part of their family. That night, as Olivia drifted into sleep, Max lay curled at the foot of her crib, his ears twitching as he listened to the soft rise and fall of her breathing. In those quiet moments, the past, the coffin, the fear, the abandonment, seemed like a distant nightmare fading into the background. The next morning, a soft knock came at the door. It was Dr. Hayes, the veterinarian, returning with news and questions. She carried a small device that could scan for microchips and nodded as she confirmed that Max's chip was active and registered to a family that had recently moved out of state. "It looks like Max has been missing for about 2 months, she explained. The previous owners never reported his disappearance to the local shelters, so he wasn't officially listed as lost. It's a sad situation, but at least he's safe now." Emily nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. "We're going to keep him," she said firmly. "Olivia has already fallen in love with him, and we can't imagine life without Max." Dr. Hayes smiled. "I think you're doing the right thing. Max is lucky to have found you, and Olivia." As she left, Max followed Emily to the door, wagging his tail gently. Olivia reached out from her mother's arms, touching the dog's nose with a tender finger. The connection between them was undeniable. That day, Max took his first shaky steps toward healing, both in body and spirit. And Olivia, with her innocent bravery and open heart, had become the unlikely hero who brought light back into his life. Days after the astonishing discovery at the cemetery, Max's world began to shift, from one of fear and loneliness to warmth and hope. The Jensens had transformed a corner of their home into a little sanctuary for him. Soft blankets layered on the floor, a cozy dog bed beside Olivia's crib, and a quiet space where he could recover without stress. Emily watched with quiet relief as Max's ribs slowly became less pronounced and his eyes regained a spark of life. It was clear that every gentle meal, every calm touch from Olivia, and every soft word spoken by the family was stitching the frayed threads of his spirit back together. Each morning, Olivia was the first to greet Max. Despite her tender age, she seemed to understand his needs instinctively, her bright eyes focused on him, as if she were watching over a delicate treasure. She would toddle up to his bed and softly pat his head, making low, encouraging sounds that seemed to say, "You're safe now." One afternoon, Emily noticed Max wagging his tail as Olivia approached, a sight that filled her heart with warmth. The dog's tentative steps toward the little girl spoke volumes. This was no longer a scared stray, but a hopeful companion beginning to trust again. Meanwhile, Mark was busy researching how best to care for a dog who had endured so much neglect. He read about nutritional plans for recovery, physical therapy for weak muscles, and behavioral tips to ease trauma. Every piece of knowledge was carefully applied to Max's routine. One morning, the family gathered in the living room for an impromptu check-in. Dr. Hayes returned for a follow-up visit, her face bright with optimism. She examined Max thoroughly, praising the visible progress. "His weight is up and his coat is improving," she said, "but the emotional healing will take more time. You're all doing wonderfully." Emily smiled, squeezing Olivia's hand. "It's incredible to see how much better he is already," she said. "Olivia's love has been the best medicine." That evening, something remarkable happened. Olivia, who had been shy about speaking, surprised everyone by calling Max's name clearly for the first time. "Max!" she exclaimed, clapping her hands as the dog wagged his tail in response. It was a small moment, but to the Jensens it felt like a milestone. As the days turned into weeks, Max began to explore more of the house. His cautious steps grew steadier, and his eyes often followed Olivia as she played with her toys. The two developed a routine, Afternoon naps side by side, shared meals, and gentle playtimes filled with soft laughter. One afternoon, Mark took the pair to the nearby park. Max's paws left fresh prints in the dirt as he tentatively trotted, alongside Olivia, who toddled confidently on her little feet. For the first time since his rescue, Max's ears perked up at the rustle of leaves and the chirping of birds, curiosity replacing caution. Watching them from a bench, Emily felt a rush of gratitude. "He's not just surviving, he's living." "Again," she whispered, "and Olivia, she's blossoming too." The family's love had breathed new life into Max, and in return, the dog offered quiet companionship and unwavering loyalty. His presence brought joy to their home, knitting their hearts closer together. At night, when the house grew still, Max would lie beside Olivia's crib, alert but calm. Emily often peeked in to see the dog's soft breathing synchronized with the baby's peaceful slumber, a silent promise that they would protect each other. Through gentle care, patience, and a little girl's fearless love, Max was healing, not just his body, but his soul. And in that healing, the Jensens found a deeper meaning to family and resilience, and spring was turning to summer when Max's transformation became undeniable. The once gaunt, frightened German shepherd was now a lively, alert dog with a glossy coat and bright eyes that sparkled with newfound joy. But more remarkable than his physical recovery was the deepening bond between Max and little Olivia, a connection that blossomed with each passing day. Olivia, now nearly 2 years old, had grown fearless around Max. She followed him everywhere, her tiny footsteps echoing in the house as she trailed behind the dog like a devoted shadow. Max, once wary and cautious, began to see Olivia not only as a protector, but as a cherished friend. Every morning, as the sunlight poured through the windows, Olivia would excitedly run to Max's bed, her hands reaching out for him. Max would rise slowly, his tail wagging gently, and the two would share a ritual that became a daily joy. Olivia placing her soft hands on Max's head, and Max responding with a gentle lick on her cheek. One particularly warm afternoon, Emily watched from the kitchen as Olivia and Max played in the backyard. Olivia giggled uncontrollably as Max chased a bright red ball she had tossed, his movements playful and full of life. Max would bring the ball back, dropping it at Olivia's feet, then nudge her hand with his nose, inviting her to throw it again. Their laughter and barking filled the air like a joyful symphony. Mark joined Emily at the window, smiling as he saw their daughter's fearless delight. "It's amazing," he said softly, "how these two found each other, like pieces of the same puzzle." The healing wasn't just physical or emotional, it was a transformation of spirit. Max had become a guardian of the household, always attentive to Olivia's every move. If she stumbled or cried, Max was immediately at her side, offering quiet, comfort. His presence was a balm, calming and reassuring. The neighbors began to notice the change too. Mrs. Harper from down the street stopped by one morning with a basket of homemade cookies. "I can't believe how healthy Max looks now," she said warmly. "And Olivia's so happy. It's like they're inseparable." Emily nodded, her heart full. They really are. Max has given Olivia confidence, and Olivia has given Max a second chance. As summer deepened, the family started taking daily walks through the nearby woods. These trips became adventures for Olivia and Max, who explored together with an energy and curiosity that lifted everyone's spirits. Olivia would pick wildflowers, dropping petals for Max to sniff, while Max kept a watchful eye on his little companion, ready to protect her at any moment. One day, while sitting on a fallen log, Olivia reached out and hugged Max's neck, wrapping her small arms around him. Max leaned into the embrace, his eyes closing in contentment. Emily and Mark watched silently, tears of joy glistening in their eyes. The bond between baby and dog was no longer just healing. It was a powerful friendship, full of trust, laughter, and love. They had become inseparable partners in a world that once felt uncertain and scary for both of them. At night, Max's gentle snoring blended with Olivia's soft breathing as they slept nearby, the comfort of each other's presence a constant reminder of how far they had come. It was a story of survival, but more importantly, a story of love's quiet strength. The Jensens often thought about the strange, heartbreaking circumstances that had brought Max to the coffin in the cemetery. But now, they chose to focus on the miracles that followed: a baby's fearless kindness, a dog's courage, and the unbreakable bond that had saved them both. And as Olivia's laughter echoed through the house and Max wagged his tail in joyful response, it was clear that their story was only just beginning. Max's recovery had become a symbol of hope for the entire neighborhood. The story of the German shepherd found trapped in a coffin, rescued by a brave little girl, had spread beyond the Jensens' household, touching hearts far and wide. What had begun as a private family ordeal had turned into a community-wide celebration of kindness and resilience. Emily and Mark soon found themselves fielding phone calls and messages from neighbors, friends, and even strangers wanting to help Max and Olivia. Donations of toys, blankets, and dog food poured in, and offers to volunteer at local shelters grew. The Jensens were humbled by the outpouring of support. One Saturday morning, the family organized a small gathering in their backyard, a welcome home Max party, complete with balloons, refreshments, and laughter. Children from nearby homes came with their own dogs, eager to meet the famous German shepherd. Olivia, dressed in a bright yellow dress, proudly led Max around as if introducing him to a new kingdom. Mark stood by the grill, chatting with Mr. Collins, the cemetery groundskeeper who had played a crucial role in Max's rescue. "I never thought something like this would bring so many people together," Mr. Collins said, shaking his head with a smile. "It's amazing how a single act of kindness can ripple through a whole community." Emily nodded, watching Olivia chase bubbles with a group of children. It's the little things that matter most. A baby's curiosity, a family's compassion. Max's story reminds us all to look out for one another. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Dr. Hayes arrived to check on Max, greeted warmly by the gathering. She marveled at the dog's vitality and happy demeanor. "Max is a testament to the power of love and care," she said, petting his head. "He's lucky to have found a family like yours." The party wasn't just a celebration for Max, it was a reminder of the good in the world. Many attendees shared stories of their own rescues and the bonds they had formed with animals. Tears, laughter, and hugs mingled freely. Meanwhile, Olivia, tired but happy, settled into Emily's arms as the crowd began to disperse. Max lay at her feet, his tail thumping gently on the grass. Emily whispered, "You've brought so much joy to all of us." As night fell, the Jensens sat quietly on their porch, reflecting on the journey they had taken. From the day Olivia had discovered Max in the coffin to now, the transformation was astonishing. Max was no longer just a survivor. He was a beacon of hope and healing. But even amidst the joy, questions remained. Who had left Max in that coffin and why? The local police had opened an investigation, and while no immediate answers had surfaced, the community's resolve to protect its animals had strengthened. In the coming days, the Jensens worked with neighbors and animal welfare groups to raise awareness about animal cruelty and abandonment. Flyers were posted, and town meetings discussed ways to ensure no other dog would suffer as Max had. Olivia, though young, seemed to understand the significance of their mission. Her innocent love had saved Max, and now her family's advocacy hoped to save many more. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Olivia leaned against Max, stroking his fur with a quiet determination. Emily smiled, knowing that the courage of a tiny child had sparked a movement of compassion. The journey was far from over, but Max's story had already changed countless lives, proving that even in the darkest moments, love and community could bring light. The days following the Welcome Home Max party were filled with quiet hope and careful investigation. The local police department had assigned Detective Ramirez to the case, determined to uncover the truth behind Max's terrifying ordeal. While the community celebrated his recovery, the mystery of how such a gentle dog had ended up trapped in a coffin lingered like a shadow. Detective Ramirez began by canvassing the neighborhood, speaking to residents, and searching for any unusual activity around the cemetery in recent months. The answers, however, were sparse. No one had seen anything suspicious, and no missing dog reports had been filed that matched Max's description, until an elderly woman named Mrs. Heller came forward. Mrs. Heller, a longtime resident who lived several blocks from the Jensens, had been quietly observing the investigation. She approached the detective cautiously, clutching a faded photograph of a young boy and a German shepherd. "That's Max," she said softly, "or at least it was him a few years ago." Intrigued, Detective Ramirez invited her to explain. Mrs. Heller told a story of a family who had lived in the neighborhood a few years prior. The boy in the photo was their son, and the dog was Max, their loyal companion. She recalled seeing the dog tied up in the backyard at times, and sometimes neglected when the family struggled with financial hardships. "I think the family moved away suddenly," Mrs. Heller added, her voice tinged with sadness. There were rumors they couldn't care for the dog anymore. The detective nodded thoughtfully. He obtained records from the city housing office and confirmed the family had indeed relocated months before Max's rescue, leaving no forwarding address. The trail, however, went cold. Back at the Jensen home, Emily and Mark listened to the updates with a mix of relief and sorrow. "At least we know Max has a past," Emily said, stroking his now glossy fur. "It's heartbreaking to think about." "What he endured," Mark agreed. "But what matters is that he's safe now and loved." Meanwhile, Olivia continued to thrive in her newfound friendship with Max. Their daily routines were filled with joy and adventure, from morning playtimes to quiet evenings. Max had become not just a pet, but a steadfast protector and companion. 1. Afternoon. While Emily cleaned the backyard, Olivia wandered near the garden and spotted something unusual beneath the rose bushes. Digging gently with her small hands, she uncovered a small rusted metal box. Curious, Emily carefully opened it and found old dog tags inside, engraved with the name Max and a phone number. Excitement buzzed through the household. Mark immediately called the number, hoping for answers. On the other end was a man, who introduced himself as Tom, a former neighbor who had known the previous family. He expressed sorrow for what Max had endured and confirmed that the family had faced serious hardships, leading them to abandon the dog in desperation. Tom explained that he had tried to help at the time, but hadn't known how to intervene fully. "I'm glad Max found you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. This new information brought a bittersweet closure to the Jensens. They decided to honor Max's past by creating a little memorial in their garden, a symbol of resilience and second chances. Olivia helped plant flowers around the spot where the box was found, her tiny hands carefully pressing petals into the soil. That night, as the family gathered around the memorial, Emily reflected on the journey. "Max's story is about survival, forgiveness and love," she said softly. "We can't change the past, but we can make sure his future is full of happiness." Max rested his head on Olivia's lap, the soft glow of the evening wrapping them in peace. The mystery of the coffin had deepened their appreciation for the second chance life had given him, and for the incredible bond forged between a baby and a dog who saved each other. The seasons had quietly changed, marking a full year since Max's miraculous rescue. The Jensens' home was now filled with laughter and warmth, a stark contrast to the cold silence that once enveloped the German shepherd in that dark coffin. Max had become a beloved family member, his gentle presence a daily comfort to Olivia and her parents alike. Olivia, now a confident toddler, ran freely through the house and yard, with Max faithfully at her side. Their bond had only deepened, the dog's protective instincts perfectly matched by the child's fearless spirit. Wherever Olivia went, Max followed, watching over her with unwavering devotion. Emily often marveled at the transformation, not just in Max, but in their entire family. The rescue had brought them closer, teaching lessons about compassion, resilience, and hope that they would carry forever. One bright morning, the Jensens planned a special outing to the local animal shelter, where Max's story had inspired many volunteers. The shelter had invited the family to share their experience, hoping to encourage others to open their hearts and homes to animals in need. As they arrived, Olivia's eyes lit up at the sight of so many animals waiting for love. Max trotted proudly beside her, tail wagging as if he understood the importance of the moment. Emily spoke to a small crowd, sharing the tale of Max's rescue, his struggle, and the unbreakable bond with their daughter. Max's journey shows us that even in the darkest places, kindness can shine through, Emily said, her voice steady but emotional. Every animal deserves a second chance, and sometimes that chance comes from the most unexpected heroes, even a little baby. The room filled with applause, and volunteers exchanged hopeful glances. For many, the Jensens' story was a beacon of light, reminding them why their work mattered. Later, as the family toured the shelter, Olivia knelt beside a shy puppy, her small hands reaching out in friendship. Max stayed close, as if offering silent encouragement. The moment symbolized a new chapter, one not only of healing for Max, but of ongoing compassion for animals everywhere. Back at home that evening, the Jensens gathered around the garden memorial they had created. The flowers had blossomed beautifully, a living tribute to Max's past and future. Olivia placed a small hand-painted stone beside the blooms, her eyes shining with pride. "Thank you for saving me, Max," she whispered softly. Her voice filled with the purest gratitude. Max responded with a gentle lick on her cheek, the promise of lifelong friendship clear in his warm eyes. As the sun set behind the trees, casting a golden glow over the yard, Emily and Mark stood together, watching their daughter and dog play. The journey from despair to joy had been long and difficult, but every moment had been worth it. Max was no longer the dog abandoned in a coffin. He was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of love. And for the Jensens, that was the greatest story of all.